So I'm going to share the slides here. Good. With that said, Mathieu is going to give us many examples with reference to the France 2030 strategy of what exactly these questions look like once you work in government.
Thank you for coming to this briefcase. It's called Public Sector's Capabilities at Play Shaping, and Jacopo explained shaping involved many stakes, and try to explain how it worked, how this plan have been designed, and what is going on, and what is my daily job today, and what it implies to shaping, because all the other, let's say, notions, seizing, the yes, it all makes sense. You can't isolate one of them, but it implies sometimes to focus especially on shaping, because it's one of the key, a key success factor to make it happen. Briefly, what is France 2030? It's been announced in 2001 by the president as well as a, I would say, electoral program and a special program for the state. And it was quite a massive scale because it was designed for 54 billions. And the objective was to invest in different sectors because challenges were identified. How can we, on the long-term basis for 2030, promote industries, research, competences to a scale so that we can overcome challenges, so that the climate transition, sovereignty, industrialization of the country. And this plan has been, I would say, packaged with several levers and objectives. Here you can see all how it's been dispatched. Choices have been made, of course. We could have tried to support every topics, every sectors, but it wouldn't make sense. The objective here is to define a mission. It means we have made choices at start, and we wouldn't be redundant with all the work of the ministries. I will say a bit more about the structure of the SGPI, Secretariat General for Investments. All those topics have been identified because there were challenges that we were aware of. We were connecting with the ministries, and they already have roadmaps. We have met the industries. We have met the research. We have met a lot of people, and we try to package all this master plan with levers. It implies for each one of them there is a strategy and funds dedicated to reach all the objectives. You only see the top of the objectives. It doesn't. I will try to explain how it's been shaped concretely with research program, with maturation program, with demonstration program, with equity investment program, so that there is a continuum of funding from the upstream research to the industrialization. Just to be more specific, I'm in charge of what is called raw materials. It implies to secure the materials that would be required to provide for all the rest of the plan. Well, it's a bit daunting, but everything is daunting when you started the challenges. The thing is, it's reduced to plastics, metals, biomass, water, and other technologies that could help us to find new materials, or as well as recycling the materials to give us a bit more, a bit less constraint on the resources. I would like to spend some time. I have only planned one slide for the moment. I think it's quite easier for the time is quite short, but to spend some time on it. So maybe you have a lot of questions. We can discuss it a bit later. First question is, why would we need a plan? Ministries already have their roadmaps. They are building roads, they are building hospitals, they are taking care of policies, they are in charge of everything as usual. Why would we need another plan? The fact is, we have different challenges, and ministries, they are of course cooperating. There was this idea that maybe if we put a plan which is at its core interministerial, meaning we are at the SGPI, not the ministry. We're involved in the Prime Minister services. The services are about, I would say, 4,000 people, but we are a very small team, about, I would say, roughly 60 people. So a really short team. It implies that we have to be connected to every ministries, and we have to define a specific governance so that we can interact with each one of them. But we have to promote them at start. I didn't mention it at the beginning. This France 2030 plan, it started 10 years ago, in fact, with a master plan called Investissement d'avenir, investment for the future. But at start, it was not so well, I would say, packaged. In the first place, it was a very small team, maybe like 20 people. They had a budget, they had a mission to invest to overcome challenging in innovation. How we can identify the right challenges and the right innovation topics that could help us to promote France, because that was the objective. As a top leader for, I would say, recycling, for producing medicals, medicine, for different kind of topics. And then things had changed because it's like a living material. You cannot, as I would say, like in a cell, you cannot provide new energy in a cell without changing the cell itself. And slowly the connection got stronger with the ministries. They got used to working a bit more together, and they understood that this plan is shared all along with all the ministries. It means they decide. We have to provide them the right information at the right time. We build call for project, many tools. We have many, hundreds of call for project. But we have to specify which one are the good one for the project owners. And then we have operators. I listed them. We count on them because they are not enough for assessing all the project. You see the results a bit later. And we need their help to define the right process. It means that the governance today was not what it was at its start. There were many more operators, there were many more actors involved, and the geometry of the people involved was a bit, I would say, fluctuant. Right now, 10 years after, this plan, I think, benefits from the return of experience of what has worked and what did not work. The SGPI is one of the service of the Prime Minister. It means that when people do not agree, we do not vote for the project. But sometimes when the ministries agree to vote for funding a project, we could say, well, it's not fitting in the plan. So we more like have a veto, we say, power. You have other services that have been designed recently, which is called SGBE. E for ecological transition. We are investment, and they are the team that has defined for the last year all what we call in France ecological planification. They made a huge work on defining for the state something that was not available to now. What are the main challenges, but quantitatively, the challenges that we have to overcome to reduce the greenhouse emission gases for each sectors. So they discuss about the manufacturing good, about transport, about building, about energy, about circular economy, about they try to define all the roadmap. They didn't say how to make it, they say what the targets are. And these targets were aligned with all the other policies we might have. In France, we have a law for, to reduce plastics. Then we have the European policies for single plastic use, for example. You have the Critical Raw Material Act for the metals. We have a list of policies. We have to be compliant. And then we have our own objectives. Sometimes France said we want to be a bit more challenging on some policies. It's always very difficult because to be more challenging implies you're not playing the same rules sometimes in France than in other countries, and it sometimes can be considered as a constraint for the industry. So you have to be very careful to apply the right level of pressure on each sectors. So for the governance, the SGPI is in charge of the plan, and we're directly connected with a dedicated governance with the ministries. It means I have like monthly meeting when we see all the projects for my part that could be funded, and we discuss a bit before with the operators, with the ministries, should it be the right project to be funded. We have a lot of exchanges outside of this governance to share what the results could be. Because sometimes, even if a project by itself is good, we're not looking for return of investment. It's called investment in the title of the entity. But we are looking for objective of decarbonization. Half of the master plan should be dedicated to the decarbonization of the industry. The other half should be dedicated to what they call emergent actors, new companies that are shifting from previous businesses to new businesses that are more aligned with the, I would say, the climate change issues. And when we have some specific topics, I think it's the same in other governments, we provoke, I would say, meetings when we ask for arbitrage. Sometimes we cannot agree. It happens, of course, sometimes. But we have to find, I would say, the best outcome of it. And those meetings are really important because this is a place where, I would say, the most non-consensual arguments are given. People really reveal themselves and they say what they want to do. So those places are really, really important because it's in those kind of meetings where you can understand what people and administration are working. In the governance, we're only working with the administration. Of course, you have ministries. Ministries are a bit more political. They have their cabinet, and sometimes the interface is quite difficult. I don't think, speaking of methodology, that we have designed this governance taking into account the number of interfaces. At start, I was specialized in information systems. So you're always concerned when the more interface you have, the more trouble you may have. It's always. But there we try to identify how to smooth the relationships between all those stakeholders. It implies the team in which I'm working. I have colleagues that are working for agriculture, for transport, for hydrogen, for the carbon shed. A colleague working for what we call sustainable cities. Each one of us, we are, we start to exchange the best practices, but we are engaged on an everyday basis on our topics. It's quite useful, even if this is why it was very interesting for me to discuss today about this, because you're doing it, you have results. So maybe you can think it's the good way of doing it. The results we only know the results in many years. The project we have funded, they will start today, they will last for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then the results might be seen later. When you're building an industry or a demonstrator, you have to wait 2 years before they take the decision to invest in the final plant. And then the plant will produce or not the result. You have a ramp up, you have many things could happen. So we don't know yet if the results will be good. It's always difficult to have the right, I would say, the right target. We keep up targeting objectives, but sometimes we don't know which path we will make. We have to remain quite agile on an everyday basis. So I discussed about who is involved. Discuss a bit about how we support, shaping what kind of help we could provide. We have essentially call for project. That means that we open it. The operators are opening the call for project, and then the project owners are submitting their files. But to open a call for project, it's a long-term discussion. You discuss with the whole industry, and when you have gathered what they want, and you feel it's a specific topic for the program, then you say we can open it. We provide subsidies. We provide something which is almost like a loan. If the company fails, it will become a subsidy. It's something very different from usual banking. Banking, when you have a loan, you have to commit it to a loan. Shaping also, you might say, going back to the objectives, all the objectives that have been defined now 3 years ago almost, are they still relevant? It's part of being on a strategic level, and sometimes we have to deal with very tactical movements. Are we still on the same scale? Are we on the same time frame? When you're thinking about building new nuclear reactors on the small scale, it's something when you're thinking about much more than 2030. The first demonstrators might be on this thing. When you're thinking about hydrogen, the objective is to go much faster because this is the plan. So sometimes we stick to the master plan, but we agree that those objectives are quite I would say, quite either vague or either adaptable, and we adapt the relations we have with the ministries, and we adapt on an everyday basis with the call for project. So we have this agility to monitor the plan and to adapt to what could happen. The plan was just after the COVID, but we did not have yet the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. It was a major impact, of course, because a lot of companies could not have their, I would say, their materials. They could not have say to their sponsors, to their colleagues. So we had to readapt, but the plan did not change. Considered it was quite robust. It was still something we could pursue. We also have tried to define, I would say, the governance. Our governance changed at least 2 times on quite a major scale. We are looking to imply, of course, the state, but we also have asked experts to be involved in the process. We have confidentiality issues. We check every time the conflict of interest. The companies give their agreement on the specific experts we are choosing. But then they have to assess the project and say, is it on a technical point of view a good project? Is this on a perspective, on state of the art, a good project? We're getting a bit expert, but we're not expert. We're not scientists. We can't know everything from hydrometallurgy, from metal recycling to the bio-based molecules or molecular platform. The scale is huge. And we need experts to give us an insight and out of the state, so we can make a, I would say, counterfactual assessment. We think it's a good project. What do the experts say? The best, of course, is when we all align, but sometimes we do not. Sometimes we do not agree even with the ministries, and we have to discuss. We discuss a lot. They say the say-do gap. We discuss a lot, but in the end, we have to do things. We have to engage the, I would say, the fund on the best project we could have. So we keep managing our timeline. Sometimes we have to accelerate very fast because we know we have to make an industry go out right now because it is the right timing. And sometimes we know we have to make the decision very intense, but it will last a bit longer because all the requirements are not ready. Policies is still ongoing. We don't know yet what will change in Europe. We don't know yet. You've heard the election in France. It could be the electoral agenda could reshape, I would say, the landscape. So some laws could be a bit delayed. And sometimes the industry themselves, they face difficulties. They plan to invest in a plan, but they are short on investment. They have difficulties on specific intellectual property and being attacked from another country. And sometimes everything could be short-circuit. Meaning shaping, we did it at the start. I think that would be the end of the exchange. Of course, we try to actively think of shaping the program. And people that have been involved were expert. They've been in the state for a long time. But then we have to make it operational. And the shaping, as I would say, every project, you talk about mission. I've been there for 2 years and a half, and I was working in the private sector previously. In a company, you're essentially doing project. Everything almost right now is project-based. For the state, it was something a bit newer because they were doing a long-term action, and to package new objectives in missions, it was quite a shift. You have services, when you discuss, it's hundreds of people, but they're all aligning on doing their everyday basis. I would say it's not only that, but they're building roads, building hospitals, and make sure everything works for the state. But to package missions that have a specific objective, of course, you have to find a new way of working. But these are the same people, and you can find training inside the state. But it's a bit different than from a company. Companies say, well, my colleagues need to improve on specific design thinking skills. They need to improve on their, I would say, climate change understanding. I will find the right expert and I will try to make them grow and learn. In the state, it's the same, but different. Sometimes it could be a bit slower because we have to make it happen. We do not have the same tools. The positive point is that we are not submitted, I would say, to fashion trends. Keep having this long-term objective, And as I said, sometimes the past could be a bit difficult, but we are always focusing on the past. And what we call the word result, it's not it's always what will it cost to the society. We are talking about public fund. So we should always ask, is it the right project? Should we invest in? What we bring back to the society, what in the market, should not we have invested in other projects? I think I tried to describe what shaping and all the notions it implies on it. I go very shortly, but just to illustrate what we've done. To date, we have invested in a bit more than almost 30 billions already. So it went very fast in less than 2 years. It's about 3,000 projects, a bit more than 4,000 beneficiaries, either from small companies to research to different sectors. To give an example, when you were speaking about I'm in charge especially of two what they call strategies. It's inside the level raw materials. One is, for example, circular economy, especially to convert the waste and old feedstock we could have into resources. But we're not doing the whole economy, circular economy. I'm not doing eco-conception. I'm not doing functionality economy. I'm not doing a lot of relevant activities. The mandate was very, I would say, focused on the converting of waste to resources. We have designed a strategy with research centers, the National Research Agency. We have maturation program with other, I would say, a network of between clusters and I would say competency-based institutes. We have demonstration program. A lot of companies are trying to innovate and see if it works. And we have also equity. I'm not in charge of equity program, but once they are, I would say, mature enough, then they can have access to the equity. It means they will open their capital to not only private investors, but also to the state. The state will remain always on a quite small share. To remain to the plan, we are looking always to improve, because the objective we reach, are they the good one right now? It means that maybe the plan is not ended yet. We still have to adapt to everyday challenges, and maybe we have to think again about how shaping new decisions, shaping new call for projects. This is a quite small scale, but maybe we have to discuss and say if we face difficulties, it could shape differently also the state, with other ministries, with other services. Today we are looking for the competencies. We try to make it happen in the best way, but we are not in charge of the organization. It's at the hand of the Prime Minister itself. So we are still discussing, and it's a living material.
Great. So this much for the initial presentation. Very thanks, Mathieu. Very much thanks. Do we have questions still related to the presentation, to the plan, to the governance, before we jump into the exercise? Oh, sure. Yeah, let's maybe take these three to begin with.
You can speak quite loud, guys.
Yeah. Someone want to start? Okay. Yeah, super interesting case and really interesting presentation. I was interested in, I'm from the Netherlands, so we have similar, actually quite interministerial approach there as well. So we have missions reaching across all ministries, we have societal themes, and one of them is health, one of them is more energy related. And I was wondering what's your feeling of these objectives really resonating within the ministries? Because sometimes ministries work with 2,000 civil servants working in these ministries, doing their day-to-day jobs. Some of them have been working there for 10 plus years. How does that, first one question is, how does it resonate? So this plan resonate within the ministries? And how does that then relate to the day-to-day work that they're doing? Do you really feel like these civil servants really think of these objectives every week, every month? Do they call it to mind? Oh yeah, we're working towards these objectives, or is that something that you really have to push from your organization? So how's this? That's the question.
We have to try to map out time-wise the different questions.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
And also, if you can mention your name and the institution that you're working to.
Yeah, Marin Banks and I'm from Helgoland, so we're kind of a bit sort of your organization, but then for the Netherlands, so we work cross-ministerial.
Great.
I'm Jakub Kofler, working for the Austrian Institute for SME Research, and we're doing a lot of work on monitoring and evaluation, and I would be interested in what kind of facilities are there in place, or what kind of information system you have working with all these different ministries, making sure that everybody has the right information on like the progress you make, because you know you have to take decisions on the way, right? And to make qualified decisions, you need the right information on the way. So I would be interested.
Yeah, I'm Coralie. So I'm a former student in IIPP, and I used to work for the French health minister. I was wondering, because I know a little bit about innovation program in France, and what would you say is different with this one comparing to previous ones? Because I think that it's heavily inspired by mission policies and mission orientation frameworks. But I was wondering if you see really a change when you inspire people with France 2030. And I have a second question that is, you talk about it's quite a shift, and I can see that it's heavily investing in technology and material to achieve objectives. But do you think and do you see investment into mental modes, shifting in how, like, consciousness, how people, because you can have a net zero program, but it's a burden on people, and you need this extra energy for them to actually operate. And so, like, you talk about maybe soft skills and course and degrees, but I was wondering how you see that kind of shift in mental modes and cultural shifts happening.
First round, then we'll have a second one. Mathieu.
I start with the explanation of the difference. We used to have different funds. The latest large-scale one was called France Relance. It was just after COVID, and it was 100 billion dedicated to support the economy. But it was to support the economy after, I would say, a trauma. With the COVID, everything stopped, and the state chose to support a lot of small companies, a lot of activities, and all the companies that could file a case, provided they can prove they were strongly impacted, they could benefit from the plan. But the objective of the evaluation of the plan was very different. It was not built like this plan, which objectives are on a long-term basis. And I spoke about decarbonation, about the plan called Understanding Better. It means we are working with the skills and the trainings of the people. Producing better, I mean we have to optimize the plans and the way of working, and living better. Why are we doing all this? Just because to make it the future a bit more sustainable. But this plan, the objective in itself was different, and it was operated. The previous plans were not operated with interministerial teams. It means that the other ministries were maybe not aware of how the decisions were made. Today we are very, I would say, we use collaborative. We are collaborative, but the right word is interministerial. You can be sometimes not collaborative, but as you're interministerial, you have to collaborate. And it works. How do you keep people involved? Of course. In the budget, we have those 54 billions, and previously I talked about investment avenir, it was 56, so a bit more than 100 billion. It's a large amount of money. It's not targeted. We have the objective. We don't know on which targets. So of course the ministries, they say, well, we have also a project. Look at our project. So they, of course, they're involved. But we have to make a good separation on their project, which are their objectives of ministries, and the project of innovation that we find eligible to all the criteria we have designed. So, of course, sometimes we have pressure because they say it's essential. Understand it's not on the plan. cannot build roads, we cannot build hospitals. We can build one, we could help to build one, provided it's very innovative. So they designed, not innovative, but because they put solar panels. Innovative because it's a completely different way of approaching the medicine and the relations and services to the patient. How do we monitor everything? Well, we need at least maybe 40 watts. That's the power of the human brain. We do not have much more. The information system has operators have information system. At the state, all the ministries have their own, but we do not have the large-scale information system. For many reasons, I talked about interfaces. You have too many interfaces and they are changing too much. And right now we don't have a big architect who could design this. So we stay at a quite small scale information system, provided they could gather the right information. As you said, sometimes on services there are thousands or hundreds, so it's easier for them to provide overall knowledge and indicators. For our part, we just focus. We work with the colleagues, but I'm alone to do this part. So we have to rely on other people, of course, to produce the information.
We want to go. We don't want to go too much over time, but we can. So very short questions. 1 second round. Who was the first one to be addressed? Right. You do.
Cultural shifts.
Okay.
I'm not hearing well.
Sorry, on the cultural shifts, like
The mental models?
yeah.
Right.
Sorry, because of the event, I can't continue.
Cultural shifts.
Like how
The cultural shift.
Yeah.
We are quite lucky because this plan arrived after, I would say, almost 10 years of previous similar plans. I think it would have been much different 10 years ago, and there has been a real cultural shift. At some ministries say, why are you having budget, and why is it not our budget? And why are we not providing more, I would say, objectives that could be, we could help to design it and say yes, but you could design it and do it alone. Interest and the major cultural shift is say you have this for you, it's a budget that you can spend, but you have to agree with the other counterparts and everyone, all the ministries. And if one, it's a consensus. We, at a time where the governance say we have one ministry, one vote. Well, it doesn't work well because if one says no, everything is blocked. So we always discuss and we try to find agreement. So we try to find the right level of funding. Sometimes we try to discuss the specific condition. We can fund it provided if it does this or that. And we have a lot of discussion. Right now, we were discussing with the directors of central administration. So I put all the ministry there, but each one of them is headed by a central director. These are the interlocutors we have. On a daily basis, I'm speaking with their deputy directors. But in the end, if we have to stick to something, you only see a meeting with maybe like 10 or 20 people. That counts and can provide a decision. And they have been used right now. And people, as they were involved, it's been already 10 years in the industries. They know this program exists and they know what we're looking to achieve. So I would say the cultural shift, there was one, but it worked.
Only very short questions. There will also be time for interaction with the following rounds. So, is it a short one? Or?
Yes, it's sort of related. You imply that your finance ministry has equal worth. In this country, the finance ministry, the treasury, is much more powerful than everybody else. How did you, or is it true they are of equal worth, or how did you get to that sort of balance?
Other short ones, you raise the hands first.
My question is related to something you already spoke of, monitoring. I'm interested in, you spoke a little bit about macro indicators that you look for as success markers of the innovation program. What are short-term signals you look for as, hey, this is working and we're in a good place for 5 years from now?
Last two.
Yeah, I already have one, that's why.
So achieving these kind of aims is partly about doing new stuff, but it is also partly about stop doing old stuff, about destabilization, about stopping the interests of companies and so on. And also the people are probably the most resistant to their shifts. Do you consider this? How does it play out in the overall structure and maybe also in the specific project level?
Very fast.
How did you identify those key objectives to begin with, and then how did you prioritize? Because everybody says there's loads of challenges in health, for example. So you've got to balance that off with all the other ministries. So how did you identify? How did you prioritize? And how did you allocate budgets to each of them? Because some might say theirs is more important and needs larger pots of money. So that's my question.
Try to make it short.
Yes, it's nice to hear.
It's been hours. We defined, or the plan was already defined. It's been, of course, a big role because all the topics all the administration were asked, what are your challenges? What are you doing? And that it is difficult to achieve. So of course, it's very sensitive because people, they say what works and they are quite reluctant to say what does not work. And there was a methodology for it. It's quite either empirical. We cannot assess everything with criteria and define the right methodology because it's very difficult. You're asking for the short-term signals and say what can we take in account. First, we see what really works because there's no constraint. Things that do not work, we know it quite rapidly. The things that could not work, and this is the more difficult, then we have to listen very carefully to the noise, I would say, of the companies and say, well, this is good, but we have difficulties in the future. But this information, one company sometimes could be strategic, how we can monitor it and put it in the right decision. This is where you ask for the finance. Of course, they're very strong. They're thousands. They have a strategical aspect. But for my part on raw materials, they are co-president of the committee with the environment, especially the part in charge of the risks related to materials. Other colleagues for the agriculture and food is the Ministry of Agriculture. And is president, meaning they have a stronger role in the governance, but they're not the only decision making. And even if they're strong, sometimes they say yes, no, they are, and they have a lot of expertise, but they cannot decide for themselves and for us. So sometimes we have to agree on a specific committee and say we need to find the right perimeter on which we all agree, provided it's not too small. And in the end, what helps us is the objectives. We still try to stick to those objectives, and I don't think any ministry can go against those objectives. They are not, some are quantitative, but we are looking for the climate change transition. We're looking to reduce carbon. We're looking to increase the growth of companies, to increase the level of living. These are very large objectives and quite difficult to go against. All that you, we try to take into account and to remain in story. I've been there for 2.5 years. Some people have been there in the state for dozens of years. They knew why choices have been made. And sometimes it's very useful to have this memory because you say, well, why we do something different? And say, well, we tried this and it didn't work because of that. The most important part is because of the reasons that did not work. But having this memory, it helps us to try to identify what is a very good innovation and what is not. You might say, as a joke, maybe, all this plan was designed before the generative artificial intelligence. Well, I don't think it will happen in the next years to ask intelligence, but why not? Why not try to ask and see what would have been the outcome? I think it would be way too dangerous right now. Try to take into account the return on experience that all the people involved have.
All good. Great. There will be time for more reflections, which is exactly the purpose of 2 rounds of discussion in small groups. We already touched on many of the challenges and you already provided some of the solutions, but there may be still loose ends or things that you may be puzzled about, like, well, how can Mathieu actually pull this out? That's what I would like all of you to discuss in small groups for some 8-ish minutes. Then we're gonna go back and regather again questions, comments, reflections, and hear from Mathieu's perspective.
Okay, congratulations. Thank you. I'm Lilia. I'm responsible for the organization.
Yeah, just to introduce myself again, I don't know if you heard, but I'm back again. I work in an organization.
I think he said there's signals for what doesn't work, but signals for what works, you really have to
When it
listen.
started with
Because it was very legacy knowledge in the institution coming from people who've been there.
Yeah, and we helping companies also economic several we're beginning to dodge some of the
You think? I think but I think when I should have said, and I didn't say that I'm also working with similar the bar. I also have this academic side of things, but I've seen some impressive academics that can hold the floor and come back. And we're talking more than that's why we're here.
Because he said it's not very sophisticated and big. It kind of like
Who are you? Sorry, to introduce you as
You work in the regional
yes, I know. Because it's like dynamic. I suppose that's a big problem. It's such a dynamic habit itself that you don't want to bureaucratize it by giving everyone a lot of action reporting. Tell us what works and what doesn't work.
Like I think one of the levers they use is that the battery is really allocated at their unit, so you know that it's easier to get concept. If you hear, okay, we have this problem with the battery, we can just, we can just give it out and we find a concept somehow. But what I see as problematic with how this is outlined is looking at
And then if you think what are the feedback, like how do they keep informing the management
and if you really want to
the rapid
something like
because you can't wait for like
sometimes not the best, just in shaping the objective, because they have much more short-term goals, like implementing
competition so different actors will try to kind of like compete with each other, monitor too much. Like then we put out the indicators of like who's performing better. Sometimes competition could be huge. Sometimes also that people actually who are in the bottom list might decide that hey, anywhere to chase. Let's just like be stagnant and not really or maybe we might again need like a focus program to like nudge them to perform. They might need some interventions on like how to up their indicators. So because like the one experience I have from noticing in India, like in every country you have so many cities and so many agencies involved. Once you put out these dashboards or you put out these leaderboards, like who's performing better, the company company finally becomes only among the first 20 entities, the rest 80 or 90 will become like completely, they all complete the picture itself. So they all become like, okay, fine, we are not beating them, so let's just try to do our own process.
Still like ministry and so like there are
Existing national platforms like innovation or emission and it's like a global platform with different countries having ownership of different missions and they try to share knowledge.
I'm not sure about ours, everyone knows the decision-making structure. I don't know how much this relates to here, but this is resources, and if we start incentivizing based on the performance, it's the same people who get incentivized. The people who are not performing properly are the ones who need more help. It's actually like a classroom, right? It's actually who are not performing the bottom list who needs more help. But we incentivize them through the performance itself, so who actually are already performing better will get like more help.
We are
How we can fix that cycle.
Project they have already launched. They don't have a large plus one. So they decide who they are going to give. Any said any internal bits of like how they are deciding who to use the budget on which basis the project decided on. A lot of details go into like subconsciously they are functioning within the ministry as well.
And not that I guess I'm wondering either the project comes from one ministry or
It's not collaborative.
Was it very like that's the question on community based, how they originally.
we now I think that I feel like we haven't really got an around legalization and what to go around like fundamentally understanding
It's co-created. It's a bit like who sets the mission.
and in my mind
So I don't like to introduce yourself.
innovation.
Well, every country I'm an MPA student right now. Yeah, but I thought it was kind of on the city.
What needs to be what needs to be stabilized so which projects are you
We see a lot of experience who sets the mission. It's like everyone has
Strategy, kind of cross.
I don't think my advice is that in Spain,
There's been lots of studies out there.
Yeah, because I think it's actually an interesting
challenge is
and then even in there's institutions also that are it is very
They have
like
very long-term targets that everyone seems to agree with, but it really depends on what you start to reach out. So it makes it really tough down.
it just was very siloed. And so I think it's the interesting thing that it's okay
because they already have these
that would also like
it's one hour shut down.
even there, kind of
Yeah, everyone agrees, okay, this is a great target, you should have it, but how are we getting there?
I think in the data, it's quite a lot of
Yeah.
Apologies for distracting. But yeah, we know some group needs to have a representative. Again, let's just pull up the hands and share some of the reflections that we discussed in the group. Liam?
We heard some reflections from Baron about the different sort of positionalities of cross-ministerial work. Sometimes it's between, sometimes it's above, and that lends the people working in those initiatives different capacities or opportunities. And we also talked a little bit about
local governments in the Basque Country and the different connections they may or may not have with regional governments or national governments. It does kind of connect to this.
And what we briefly discussed, just looking at the objectives of like the plan, it was interesting because it very much are like some of the strongholds of like France or French industries. And what we would be interested maybe also to know is, you know, how you set a plan to transform in the long run, but then also obviously doing stakeholder consultations. But then, you know, like how to make sure that industries are really transforming and not just, you know, pushing their current agendas, which are like just knowing how our economic system works much more short term.
Our question around sort of getting the buy-in from the ministries, and I know you talked a bit about that earlier, but it sounded quite top-down on the objectives. Whereas, was there opportunities to co-create the objectives with the ministries as well to ensure that they were really bought in and engaged on delivery?
I just had another question where also you were talking about, Renee's back to the beginning of how your the whole project is financed. You work a lot with the EU. I was really interested in how did you set it up with the EU? How did you come up with the French budget, and then you also got in the EU budget? How did that relationship actually got created?
Having I would say the law of finance in France, we can define the budget, and in the budget, a part was allocated to this. Of course, there are discussions because the budget is always built under constraint, and we have to identify what could be the best amount of money to achieve those objectives. It's involved, of course, with the Prime Minister, but with the direction of the budget and every ministry that are pushing their agenda too. Then we also have funds from the Europe directly, what we call the Horizon Europe. And it's quite essential. Europe is providing too, at a large scale, funds so that countries can. We also have other funds with, I would say, the interest of IPC, interest of. I always remember the European Scale Program project. IPC.
It's important projects of common European interest.
Important project of common European interest.
Important projects of European.
IPC. And it's also a way of designing between all the countries. It's a common objective, and to achieve this objective, they agree to share all the projects that will be done, and then Europe will fund the best ones. This is how we have the resources, but we do not have the objective yet. For the first plan, I would say it was a mix between both worlds. Of course, I talked about the plan presented by the president, but it was really, I would say, hosted by the president. So it's come from really top to down. And then you have all the agenda of the ministries, of the associations, about the research centers, about a lot of people, and everything mixed at a quite high level. You see, for example, raw materials. You say, are there room to define other objectives? Yes. Well, you need to know. Here is a simplification. The translation in French is how to secure the access to raw materials. The question is huge, but in fact, we have targeted some specific objectives. So there's still room, the way the objectives are formulated, the words that are behind them, there's still room to define objective within this perimeter. So this is why nothing is, I would say, determined already. Of course, we have to achieve raw materials. So what is a raw material first? We have to make a selection for the metals. We have now the Critical Material Act. But before we have to define what were our critical or strategical metals. for the plastics? Are we focusing on all the resins? There are many ones, but we have to target the essential ones. Talking about platform bio-based molecules, which one are the essential for the transition? Which one are too costly because for the moment petrol-based molecules are quite inexpensive, and if you want to produce bio-based molecules, we have to look for innovation, but it's too costly. So we have to choose the one which we think will shift right now and right now. When we fund the project, we always ask for counterparts. So we make sure that the agenda of the companies, how can we be sure it's a contract, and we do not fund the project at start on its entirety. We say we have maybe 2 years contract if the project lasts 2 years, and we have milestones regularly, so they present what they have spent. Sometimes the budget could be much higher and the reality is much lower. It cannot be higher. We make a decision, it's maximum. But if it's different, then we discuss. Was it planned? Is it still aligned with the objectives? And the operators have a quite strong discussion sometimes with the company saying we shifted. We are not doing what we explained. Well, is it still an issue or not? If it's not, we keep going and we try to adapt. We're not holding the project. It's the state is, I would say, a large enabler. There's a part defining the policy. And this program is quite interesting because some projects were quite new. Innovation, sometimes you're at the interface of what is authorized or not. And those projects as demonstrators, they can provide results on innovative technologies that are still not recognized at the state of the art. And for example, what is a plastic today? If you use, I would say, some waste from the agriculture, you process them and you can produce a film. You can coat paper and other stuff. Are you using or designing a new paper? Are you designing a new plastic? Are you designing something different? You have to be very specific then with experts and lawyers and what kind of product is it? Is it submitted to the single-use plastic use from Europe that we ban single use of plastic? Are you submitted to the HR or REACH norms that do not authorize dangerous products? We have to go very into details then. The ministries are more essential than to monitor that. And you spoke about the interaction about local authorities and local territories. We have a service, we have a work person, in fact, which is in charge of discussing with all the, what we call in France, préfet. They are the representative of the Prime Minister, and they are the head of the one region. And then on lower scale, we have departments, which are smaller entities. And we have the network of the operators there. We have the network of the state, which is hosted by the Ministry of Finance. And all this organization, we try to send them the information we have on the funds and the investment we made. And they gave us back information before the investment. So we have information about what is happening on the field. This company is very good, but have issues with this company there, and their land is not secure because they are in trouble. And it helps us to have the right information at the right time. So this was something quite new in this plan, to have this dialogue with them.
Last, very practical thing. How many people are in your team in this organization, and what's the relationship between you and ministries? Do they see you as do you get along?
In my team for raw materials, I'm alone.
But the overall, your colleagues.
SGPI?
Yeah.
In the SGPI, I would say there is almost one colleague for one objective. Sometimes we all of us are hosted into SGPI. Sometimes what we call coordinator, because when you see one objective, it can be split in several strategies and so on. And this organization is a bit hybrid. Most of us are into the SGPI, but some of them are, I would say, lended by the ministries. But it's more difficult when you are involved and with your position. You could say no to your director central administration. Of course, when you will come back in your administration, it could be a bit difficult. So we have to discuss about the choice of those coordinators.
So I'm Nora, I'm head of the Mission Oriented Innovation Network at IIPP, and we're seeing emerging practice around missions, of which yours is one. When we talk to some, for example, an Australian innovation agency called CSIRO, they have assigned mission managers to their innovation portfolios, and there are also emergent practice, new things. And one thing that they have talked to us about is the new skills needed within the team back to capacity and capability, because these roles really are coordinator roles, but they're also roles of deep dialogue, it seems. So do you feel like you have to be a diplomat? Like, are you, as a collaborator, you're trying to make everyone happy? Is this new within the French government? Do you feel like you're doing something new, trying to bring all these people together around common objectives? And what are the skills that you're seeing that you have to deploy as a mission manager? What energy do you draw on in order to try and to make these things happen?
Yes, I would say that we need a bit of diplomacy sometimes to remain curious about either the technologies, because we can't know everything. You need to build your network of people, because you have the institutions discussing together, but sometimes you have to be discussing with people, and you have to create a bond with them to be sure that you're working in trust. Sometimes I have trust, and they tell me, well, we are going to say no to your proposal, and why? And when we are prepared, we know there will be a confrontation, but as we know it before, we can prepare it, and we try to find a consensus. I think it's not much different than what they're doing for the more international strategies on climate. It's quite difficult for us to reach. For the skills, we have also identified the skills required for the project partners. We're investing on plant. If there's only a plant with no workers on it, it won't be a success. So we have to work with the local communities to be sure that the project will be well understood. Sometimes when you're building a project, for example, a large plant recycling plastics, people could be worried. Building a new mine for gathering lithium, people could be worried, of course, but you have to work with the authorities to explain what this project is for, what are the objectives, what are the counterparties that we ask the company. That has to respect all the regulatory topics. We're not in charge of checking it, but we have to have in the contract that they will fulfill all their commitments.
Yeah. It was just to continue with this. So when the mission manager or the people that are in charge of the objective were recruited, or even now in your discussions, like, are the soft skills of being able to dialogue and being able to collaborate, because it's not something that is that is there, or that is something that you need to learn and build. And so I was wondering if you're conscious of the fact that in your teams you need those skills, or is it something that is not mentioned and it's just flow naturally, and you don't think those skills are needed, or you just go along with those skills, particular skills?
Bit of both, maybe.
Okay.
So
it's organic, like.
I just wonder if part of it is the mindset of the person in the role.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had a role like this in government, and the important bit of the mindset is that you don't know the answer. You know there is an answer, or that there are answers, and your job is to sort of facilitate a finding of them and bring everybody in so that they've got a reasonable chance to contribute, but not to overwhelm, So actually the word that is coming to my mind all the time now is facilitate. You're facilitating a journey, you know where your end point might be, and you're making it work by bringing people together and building something.
Because why I'm saying that is that in France it's a very expert-oriented kind of structure, and so when you bring big objectives where people have to work together, value those kind of skills that are actually like needs to be developed, and that you need to learn how to be compassionate, how to listen, how to have this disagreements. And I feel that yeah, it's something if you were to advise to colleagues in different countries about this, would you say that those skills are needed in terms of recruitment, or it's not something that is the first priority when you set up a mission?
At start, I think recruited because I had identified it was required, so I tried to convince them that I could do it.
Okay.
But then when I see new colleagues that are coming, and they have their own track record, I would say, but sometimes they say, I now understand that we have built quite a know-how of doing it, because they ask us and say, how do you do it? Because it could be a mess, but you succeed, and the meeting, we achieved the objective, we had a consensus, and it was not easy to do it. And maybe we're doing now without thinking it, because we know the people, we know how it works, we know who to call, when, and I think it's something that we are used to.
Very last.
Yeah, really practical question probably can be asked. What's the scale of your projects in terms of how much you spend? 1 million, 2 million, 10 million? Do you have any like project categorizations? Like how much
Not
you
less,
finance?
I would say not less than hundreds of euros to billions.
So it goes up to billions for one project.
Yes.
And then the projects all go from 2 years until also 10-year projects. So it's very
mostly around 3 to 5 years, because if you go further than 5 years, you might be not mature enough, and you're too much in research and development, and meaning you're looking for a bigger or a smaller scale project. So sometimes we have huge projects on a long time, and we try to shape them and make a first step, fill a first file, ask for subsidies just for the research, for example, come back in 2 years and ask for the demonstration. Sometimes go for the industry, go see the market, the capital market.
Yeah, exactly. Do you then name projects? Because that's with us sometimes, because we also fund projects. And then sometimes these projects have set up something really amazing, and then we finance like $1 million or something to them, and then it ends. And then sometimes do we connect them then to other funds, or do they then need to just go into the market? So do you have a sort of a solution for that, or not a solution, but like a structure set up for that?
The operators, they make the contract during the life of the project, but then they have, as we give, I say, start subsidies and something which is called a avance remboursable in French, reimbursable funds. It's more like a loan.
Yeah.
Then we have to, the operators are checking the project is going well, and if the criteria are met, then the company has to reimburse those funds. Meaning there's always a dialogue with the company. And this is how we can still have the contact with the company on the long term. This is the job of the operators.
I mentioned included to public development banks, an ecological transition agency, and
because they're always in charge of all the collectivities and local authorities, and it's also a bank and stuff. And INEA is the national agency for the research.
Speaking of solution, I think it is really apt to distill and reflect in subgroups on some of the key insights, mindsets, approaches that we discussed here together. So let's revert to it for a few minutes, discussing indeed what it takes to navigate the issues that we mentioned, what is key to successful mission implementation in this respect. A few minutes, and then one last round of comments and reflections.
What are the issues we are talking about?
Minority strategy.
Yeah. What's the key to we don't know, because otherwise that would be
Success, right? I think there's just looking for
with regards to your point on the competition, top level getting what do you think about it in the innovation space, right? Those kind of mindsets that kind of especially in India, where innovation is mostly like need that space and the mindset lags.
Yeah, that was interesting. seems like this is brilliant, but it doesn't really. Well, like what is this money made of? Because we in our finance, we have about only for the society for health, we also have about 5 million 1 year for our research work. But it's more so also in kind as well. It's a kind of and 35 parts are public and private actors that are also existing. So it's more of a mobilization of existing funds rather than really lies there and now you get it. So
create programs or create packages or
I think
do some targeted
development.
Second possible way to again like a classroom example where you put the responsibility of in the bottom of the example like asking the not necessarily a mentor but this is you take the responsibility and kind of like ask the people to talk take ownership bring people to them kind of like no more sharing or something. So there is no monitoring but there is no sharing. So they don't really feel like they have to share
one thing that we're able to do that seems to be there.
Anywhere, I feel even within a classroom, it would be easy.
No, I mean like in terms of hospitality, like within like arts, something like that,
It's right on your plan.
to each other's interests, like budget public, so service like public and private actors, but people get into the budget from different people, and I think because people are so much like that sharing the if that's not covered in our mindset,
I definitely think it's challenging what you say, there as well, definitely even the sharing part of this. I have more to offer than others. So if they have something to give that organization also helps if it's only one person giving and another person taking, then I see it might not work out.
Well, sorry to divert the conversation. And it makes me think that maybe then knowledge and how
at the beginning, structure, like
But then to turn to
having
the way of thinking.
But that's an interesting issue because especially when it comes to mission group and especially I mean this is more short term, right? It's set like 2 to 5 years of implementation. So this is already kind of close to the market. But when it comes to more long term,
Support like
it is interesting
the fact that you cannot be the only person being
how to make sure that also after the next election like that's managed. So really, I think within the missions is also, how can we come up with a way to legitimize our that's what I also try to do. For example,
Organization, but it's very abstract.
It's
just missions, right? And the missions come from
like in government, especially they don't want to be decentralized power. And when you start working on like in the end, they didn't decentralize power. Very progressive and the government just like just pick and choose whatever they want. Sure. But it's why you want
I don't know what I don't have the answer.
Yeah, sure.
Like in the same way that the ministry is
especially because they
I don't know what happened. I think sharing
there's sort of representation. So it's basically saying, you don't have about your
coaching motivated, like just the quality that you're like, you want to find the answer when you're in a trial and like you're not getting it. Like university of like, I don't know what
I felt, yeah. Like, does everybody in government know?
maybe I think but also
I would say it's like even more so than honesty, it's just like clarity on
I think it could end up that way.
if a government
I think it doesn't really matter as long as you,
in government should have that.
design the process in a way that you don't it's randomized, then the sample size is enough, and then
the mission
you need to select the critical group.
at all levels.
Something differently
So did you find the essence of successful mission implementation?
Yeah, we've solved it.
Yes, I'm sure. To close up, in the little time we have left, we'll overflow a little bit, but you have a long lunch break, so no worries. I would like each group to really state rather than ask what you take away as one or more keys to success to mission implementation based on our discussion. We'll do a little round one per group, and we will leave Mathieu to share his own key or keys to success, and then we'll have a little wrap up. Okay? Who wants to start?
We can start. We had some thoughts about it, and starting maybe from the most obvious, high-level commitment, along with the investment, and that results in a creation of an organization that oversees it. It's not just starting the process, but as you were just talking about how the organization has sort of matured, it developed, how they have now created the skills and know the people in the ministries, and it has become easier to work with them. So I think that the organization in place with this kind of overseeing this, that would be one of the keys to success.
Great. Other groups?
So we were discussing a lot about sharing, especially when you work with like multiple stakeholders, the willingness to share, like not only data, like willingness to share responsibilities, share failures also, and take ownership of that. So we felt nurturing that culture of sharing would be a very important aspect when we want to achieve these successful missions.
Good.
That last one that we ended on. I think a part of it too, and that to me this is the distinction between a mission-oriented approach and a strategic approach, or simply having a strategy or a plan, is that there's such a strong orientation across the whole institution or the organization. And so a part of the key to success is also understanding what the success of the process of that orientation shift is. So for example, that everybody, I think if there's a very clear mission, everybody in government should know what that mission is and should be able to both communicate it, but also understand how it applies to their portfolio of work. And then I think that contributes to things like de-siloing and collaborating across departments, et cetera, et cetera.
Excellent.
I had one that we kind of discussed, but then maybe one that we didn't.
All right.
So I think the kind of negotiation skills, which has been mentioned, and the facilitation does feel like a really critical enabler of everything else. And failures to do that would be not great. But then,
So can I drop in a sense that prompted us to get to a sort of, you need respect between the parties for the purpose or the mission or the objective. Because if you don't have that, then things will get undermined either deliberately or on site. So how you build a culture of respect for what the game is, and all of us being part of it would be quite important. And then you have the.
and then if I may, but something we didn't discuss was around.
So we may shoot it down.
We should shoot down. Was kind of the ends and means question, which is sort of the end being the mission, the means being a very vague route through at some point. So I think that works really well. But there's also, I think, Phil earlier mentioned constraints. So, you know, if the world is actual wants battery materials, but To what extent, how far do you go to achieve a mission, right? So does that lead to conflict? Does that lead to some quite major outcomes that might be, what principles underpin that?
Yeah, so for me, a bit of that then opens up the how open is your mission? Because your mission could be about storage devices, which currently are viewed as batteries and have materials in them, but actually could be completely different things. So the classic one in the UK is we tried to build a high-speed railway from our Scottish cities to London, although we did it the other way around. But rather than say, what is the best way to build a high-speed line between the north and the south, we had essentially a minister who decided where it was going to go and then just said, that's it. Can I have £100 billion? It's going to go here. And lots of people went, really? And now, of course, it is. We could have asked an open question. We want a faster way of travelling from Scotland and Edinburgh and Glasgow to London. What's the best? So I'm glad you're nodding. So how do you, I guess there's a core question, which is, you've got missions. They are 5 years old. So some of the definitional things might be changing. How are you dealing with that?
All what you said is totally irrelevant. We need to discuss a lot. We need to respect all the stakeholders. We need to be, for my part, I would say, I discussed with Jacopo, I need to identify, I say, the limits and the boundaries of each topic, because it defines my playground. Yeah. Sometimes I know there is a boundary because something has been defined by policy, but once I know the boundary, but that's my mindset. What can I do with this boundary? Can I cross it? Just pick outside and see what it implies. But I do it knowing I'm outside of my playground. And it means the ministry, they feel respected because they know we're not trying to say not to spy them, but to understand what they're doing. But they need to give us some information. Sometimes they give me information. I don't share it right now in the bulk way. I trust that they tell me what they want to do, and I explain what we are aiming for, and then it's like making, I would say, an experiment. The observer is changing the content of the experiment itself. Yes. So you have this energy, this inertia from the ministries, from the market, from the companies, with this kind of plan, try to identify a parameter in which we're trying to put all this, I would say, like a Venturi effect. We're trying to put all this in motion in a well-defined, with a governance, with a process, so that all can happen more easily. And it was a challenge at start. You asked for the room I have in the project, the room for decision for changing things. I have a bit of room, but sometimes I can't do it because I'm just working, I would say, as a civil servant. I have to ask my General Secretariat, can you discuss with the Prime Minister cabinet or the Prime Minister, because we need to have an arbitrage on some things. Okay. Sometimes the cabinets are writing directly saying, well, we have an issue on it, can you provide insight on specific topics? And the way you're providing the insights, of course, you're influencing what they're doing. But this is always, you don't see sometimes the results right now. You see it months or years ago, not years, but I've seen some project, it takes a long time. And once you give an information, maybe 2 weeks later, you hear that information, meaning, but not to the person you told it. So it means, well, it made its way. But it's the same. We are exposed to a lot of content, and sometimes some people are better at, I would say, giving the good storytelling to the information. And, it's easier to remember. It has more impact. We spoke about design this morning. Of course, you can design the information. You can design the governance. You can design the objectives. It's quite important.
Any last remarks on key to success? If you have 2 words to synthesize, the most important.
The topics we face here that are way too complex to compute for the parts. But you have to stick to things that if you don't understand something or the way it's made, just question it. positively, but question it, because if you don't understand something, maybe people are doing it because they did not take the time to question it. Question it within your boundaries, stay at your place, but maybe the question you will ask someone, get them, and they will transfer to someone that could change the way it's made. So for the climate change, given the huge ambition we have to have all, a lot of things should change, and the more you can identify and trust yourself on the things that could be made, get information, get informed, get trained on things are important. And
that's how our mission manager thinks. Many thanks. One last thing before you leave to lunch, we have an amazing student poster session going on in the Williams Lounge.
Just where we're having lunch, yes.
Just where we're having lunch. Also an interesting project on public procurement, experimental governance, innovative roadmap. Explore it, enjoy it, and many thanks for coming to the session. I hope you got much out of it.
Yeah, I just set it up. The one at the bottom. Stuff.